So before we start diving right into creating some charts and graphs, let's explore our data and take a look to see what we have. So let's start with the pivot table first. We've done this before. I guess the first thing is sort of seeing the overall volume of Twitter. So what we want to see is we want to look at it by title name, and we also want to look at where is the total volume. And as you can see, it's sort of clear. Let's actually make this into a small chart. And then I'm not going to make this pretty right now, but just at a glance, it's sort of obvious. Megan having the biggest volume and the black phone having the second best, Smile, Barbarian, Boogeyman. But here's one thing. It's not really fair because some of the Twitter volume, as you've seen before in our database, just like the black phone, it started tracking way earlier than other titles. So this goes all the way to 40 weeks before the release, and it's got maybe about extra 12 weeks worth of data in here compared to other titles. So this wouldn't be fair right here, and especially other titles as well. So this is where our generated metric or generated tag comes into play. So let's look at the trailer flag. So this is going to be only looking at our trailer 1 week from when the first trailer released. So this is where it comes handy. We look at the first trailer only. And boom, this is the fair comparison. And it becomes way more apparent who the winner is right here. Let's make sure to remove this blank that we do not need. Megan having awesome social metric. You can see the volume sort of exploding when the trailer. Smile having small, Barbarian having the smallest, which is actually different from what we sort of looked at in terms of total sum of Twitter metrics across the board, whether it's far out before, far out after. Let's add something on top of it actually. Organic volume. This organic volume sort of shows how much people actually talk about stuff. So when I say Twitter total volume, that means that the activity includes retweet or quote tweet, especially retweet when it comes to it. You know, it's people sharing the post without saying anything. So it's not organic enough. People are not interacting with things. So when you go on social media, talk about things and sharing reels on Instagram or whatever, that's technically not organic when you share something and don't say anything about it, because we, as a data analyst, cannot interpret what you're doing with it and we don't see your input. But organic is something that you actually talk about something, you mention, or you comment on things and things like that. That any activity that actually involves a user doing something, rather than just clicking buttons and sharing exactly the same content, will be organic. So this sort of shows a ratio of how much people actually talk about those content in terms of the virality. So yes, overall total volume matters, but also the percentage or the sheer volume of organic volume matters relative to the total volume as well. So in this case, Megan doesn't seem to be extremely healthy when it comes to organic social volume. It's volume wise, it seems okay, but the ratio, I'm not sure where it is. We'll come back to this later on, but Smile is actually in this case more organic in terms of the percentage than other comps, it looks like. Maybe Barbarian as well. This is sort of good to see. And let's also look at something else too, how positive, how negative things were. So right here, we had positive, neutral, and negative. These are sheer volumes, so just to keep it in mind. And it's kind of hard to see in this case. So what we're going to do real quick is change the color. So some neg, which is negative volume, we're going to make this red. Just to make it clear. That's a little too bright, too neon. I don't like that. Neutral, let's make it gray. Positive, let's make it green. What do you guys think? Yes. At first sight, you see a lot of sort of negative volumes. I mean, not negative volume, the neutral volume, which is pretty common. This is sort of done by AI or any type of embedded coding that actually calculates whether the post is positive, negative, or neutral. A lot of things fall neutral based on our language model right now. That the what I generated with, but it seems healthy enough across the board. The only thing is, Smile right here has more negative volume than neutral or positive volume. So this is not a good sign. Especially when you look at a campaign and launching a trailer, this will be a sort of a red flag saying the volume seems to be decent. It might be smaller than others, but what's really concerning right here is that we're seeing a lot of negative volume. So that's something to note later on, or included in our sort of dashboard later on to showcase what's happening right here. What other things will be interesting? I guess relative to the sheer volumes, maybe percentage might be interesting to look at too. But in this case, we have to tweak it just a little bit. So let's look at negative organic. Oh, this is negative organic. That's not organic. That's the total. So these are percentages. First of all, you need to tweak these. These are by default, Excel forces you to sum the metrics, but this is percentage. You do not want to sum percentages. It gets to something ridiculous like these 578%, which is not what you want. So let's tweak this to average. And it will be average of the whole week worth of data. So let's see how that changes. And just like we did before, we're going to change the color on this. Positive is green. That is not it. Just this specifically. The neutral is gray as usual. And negative is red. So what do you think? This gives you a better picture actually versus the sheer volume. But it seems rather consistent across the board. Maybe there's something wonky happening with Smile actually. Data doesn't seem too consistent. So there might be an outlier that we need to take a look at. So we'll circle back there. But Barbarian having a lot of neutral, this also suggests that people are not really talking a lot about it. And sometimes what you want to do also is filtering out the data points that you do not want to see. A lot of people care about positive and negative only. So in this case, we're going to take off the neutral, only see positive and negative in this case. And then let's add something to this. We're going to add data labels. And the data label should be, I think we can leave it up there. More options. Text options. Outlines. I don't think we need outline in this case. So let's, before we build it out, let's just look at it. 8% versus 12%, 18, 24, 384, black from 15 to 70%, boogeyman, and negative. So something to keep in mind of, good to look at right here. What else will be interesting? So instead of trailer flag, how about we look at the actual campaign? So remember that we created relative week label, far, regular, and the post release. So let's look at that. And then we're going to actually make the title name come right here. Let's look at the time series of these. And then relative week. And then let's look at, since I mentioned organic volume is sort of interesting to look at. So let's look at that. And it's busy right now just because we didn't filter things out. Let's look at the pre-release, sort of the most important period of the campaign. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the data table and try to make it clean. This is not so clear, is it? You don't really know what's going on. So we're going to, how about this? Let's flip this over. And then we're going to actually make this pop a little bit more. So you can see sort of a general trend on it. I don't know, at a glance, seems like they all follow general trend of -1, which is a week before the release having the greatest peak, actually, except for Smile right here. Seems to having a peak on the release week versus the week before. That is very interesting. This normally doesn't happen, and this movie did sort of overperform versus the expectations. So something to really keep an eye on, look at, and that might be something that we want to flag as well. Just a little bit of a soundbite at the end of the dashboard. And since that is good, all right. So what we're gonna do, let's actually, now that we have a better sense of data and what's happening and what titles to sort of look at, when to look at, let's start building some of those charts in a formal way and then start piecing together the dashboard. So first, let's do this. How about we create 3 charts overall or 4 charts and then put them together into a dashboard. So we're going to individually name these. So let's say chart 1 for this one. And I think this is, we want to show what we saw in the beginning. So we're going to just look at the overall volume of everything. So total volume, that'll be sum. And then some of the filters might be week label, title name, and also relative week label and trailer flag. What we're going to do is we're not going to use these as actual filters here and then individually filter through things. We're going to add actually slicer at the end that interacts with all the charts. So let me just go ahead and create a chart for this one to show you how that works. For this one, one tip, by the way, do not go 3D unless there's rare occasions that people actually ask for 3D charts. But in most cases, it's a bit of an eyesore and you want to keep it as clean as possible. So let's just keep the very clean one. Just a bar chart. And then make sure to do sorted by the value and this actually descending order of things. I think ascending might be better actually in this case. So let's clear that. Ascending order, title, total volume. Do that. Let's also clean this chart. I think that's one of the things that people talk about not as often as that should be talked about is charts need to be as clean as possible, especially when you're presenting these charts. And when you just take a look at first right now, this looks messy, pretty messy in all cases. So we're going to name this thing first of all. We're going to see total volume by title. We're going to make sure to format this title, bold it, and then make it a little bit bigger. And then don't think we need label since it's pretty clear that we stated it's a total volume by title. So let's get rid of that. And then we do not want to see this many zeros as we mentioned earlier. So we're going to fix that too. We're going to display the units. Seems that most of the things are showing about 100,000, 200,000 up and down. But we're going to look at it from trailer perspective, which is only 7 days. So the volume might be a lot smaller. So we cannot go 100,000 millions or so. So in this case, let's go with thousands. $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. So it's a little bit cleaner now, but also let's make these bold these. And also titles have to be big. These are something that people look at. So these have to be a little bit bigger. And then shrink that size a little bit. And then, yeah, this, I'm just showing you a default of it would include something like this, an erroneous sort of title or name or whatever. You always want to make sure filter those things out. So just making sure that you guys understand that we want to keep it as clean as possible. And in this case, sometimes we also do not want to show these lines that are happening. So that is good. It's more or less clean. And let's add some stuff. Probably data labels because you cannot clearly tell what's happening. You can see that I can't really see anything right here. The numbers, it's going out of the box and everything. How about this? So in certain cases, you want to change the background color just to make it a little bit cleaner and then make the numbers pop out a little bit more. So how about we make this on a little bit of darker scale, something like that, and then make all the text white. So in this case, if the number goes outside of the bar or inside of the bar, you can always see it. And just like always, make sure to bold everything. Bold it and make them bigger. And this is a bit of an eyesore for me, going outside of the charts. Be picky about these things, everyone. I know you weren't looking for sort of detail, looking at charts, making pretty, but as a data analyst, making it pretty is what matters at the end of the day. You have to make it presentable. Presentable means pretty. So let's not make the center, let's make the inside base. So in this case, you can sort of see numbers aligned and seeing everything right there. Looks good. Thousands. I'll align a little bit more. So that's a pretty clean chart. I would sort of start off with that. So on this, let's add a slicer. So this is what I mean. Works sort of as a filter, same thing as that. But the reason why I'm doing it here versus putting it into the filter right here, it's because it's much easier to interact with all the other charts that we're going to be creating later on. But I'm creating here first so that we can sort of demonstrate what it can be done and how it should be shown. And then later on, I will merge those things. So things we want are the labels. Trailer flag, we definitely want that. Label, we want that. Also title name, we want that. I think other things are more of a values. So we do not want to put these things as filters right now. And data, it's sort of represented in the trailer flag relative weak label. We don't need those. So we're good. So add those things. So these are sort of our filters right here. So you can interact with these any way you want. So let's say you want to look at Megan and Smile. Only the two titles with first trailer. And you can see Megan is doing a lot better. Maybe not Megan since it was so much bigger. So let's look at Barbarian. Sort of on par, but Smile is sort of edging out a little bit. And how about the regular window? During the regular window, this is including far out and then also post-release and pre-release. We want to only look at the pre-release period. Barbarian's having a lot more. So this is sort of clear look. So let's select everything. So that's how Slicer works. It's extremely helpful, extremely valuable when it comes to other charts.